Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for the Johns Hopkins School of Education, Doctor of Philosophy and Education virtual webinar. My name is Tanya McMillan, and I am an admissions coordinator here at the School of Education. Also joining me today, I have my colleague from the Office of Admissions, and she will introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sion John, Assistant Director of Admissions here at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Welcome.
We also have presenting today our PhD program lead, Dr. Hunter Gelbach, and current PhD students, Sarah Caroleo and Brianna Bostic. Before we get started, I would like to cover a few housekeeping topics. First, today's webinar is being recorded. We will be able to share a link to the recording via email after the event is complete, usually within 7 business days. Please also take a moment to ensure that your microphone is on mute right now. Also, please have your video camera off and microphone muted at all times during today's presentation. There will be a question and answer session at the end. Please type your questions in the chat box and we will read and answer your questions aloud. Next, I would like to share the agenda for today's virtual webinar. We will begin the presentation sharing an overview of the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Then Dr. Gelbach will go over details of the Doctor of Philosophy program. We also have 2 current PhD students joining us as well, and they will talk about their journey at the School of Education. Lastly, we cover admission requirements and again, leave the floor open for questions. I will begin with some quick facts about the Johns Hopkins School of Education. We are one of 9 schools at the Johns Hopkins University. We began offering college courses for teachers in 1909 and then became our own school in 2007. We are proud to share that Johns Hopkins School of Education is consistently ranked one of the top schools in education by the U.S. News and World Report. For our school enrollment, we have approximately 1,741 students enrolled and also offer more than 25 graduate programs, which includes doctoral, master's, and graduate certificate programs. We also have a strong network of over 24,000 SOE alums. Moving on to our faculty presenter, Dr. Hunter Gelbach is our PhD program lead at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. He joined SOE in 2019 and received his PhD at Stanford University. Dr. Gelbach's research focuses on improving the social and motivational context of schools. Additionally, he received the Spencer Foundation Mid-Career Award in 2016. And before we review the program details of the PhD program, I would like to cover a frequently asked question: what is the difference between the EDD and the PhD program? Well, to briefly summarize what's on this chart, our PhD program is a full-time, approximately 4 to 5 year program requiring full residency in Baltimore, Maryland. Typically, the program is designed for those who are pursuing research positions or continuing research and teaching at the college or university level. There is also a strong focus towards researching and contributing new information to the field of education. On the other hand, our EDD program is a part-time online program. The time frame to complete the program is approximately 3.5 to 4 years, and this program is designed for individuals who are practitioners within their fields. Most EDD programs are focused on preparing students for administrative leadership roles. The EDD program also includes, but of course not limited to, leadership in higher educational institutions, school districts, nonprofit organizations, government agencies, and private sector positions. Typically, our EDD students choose to narrow their studies to something directly applicable to their current job or role they're aspiring to obtain. So at this time, I will hand the floor over to Dr. Gelbach to discuss the details of the PhD program. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Gelbach.
Great, Tanya. Thanks so much. Really appreciate being here, and thank you guys for taking the time. I know you all lead busy lives. Just quick procedural thing on the webcam. I'm happy to turn mine on. I don't need to be just a voice, but happy to do whatever makes sense. Yeah, let's kind of start with the end. Program objectives, end goal very much to get folks in the program gainful employment. And that typically for us is sort of faculty positions or other educational research roles. And so in terms of, yeah, how do we get there? I think the, things that sort of begin to distinguish our program are this notion of trying to pretty much everyone all the students in the program are really trying to use and leverage educational research to improve educational policy and practice. And that is sort of with a particular focus, not every student, but for most students, with a particular focus on underserved schools and students. And so I want to distinguish that from other programs, which maybe like if you're doing research that's theoretically important and that's, kind of good enough, that tends not to be quite good enough here in the sense that we really do want to impact the real world. And so as you're sort of shopping around different and looking at different programs, I think that's sort of one thing that begins to distinguish us is this real emphasis on moving the needle on actual educational practice and policy kinds of outcomes. So then, what is it we're sort of doing with our training to get to that point where you're in a great position to use educational research to impact the real world? Very much an interdisciplinary approach. And I think on the next slide, I can say a little bit more about sort of how that plays into the big picture. So, how do we do training to get you to the point of being able to impact the real world? It is an interdisciplinary approach. And I don't want to overstate this, but I think it is fair to say we especially draw on kind of two core disciplines. So there are faculty members like me in the program who are kind of coming from more of an educational psychology, learning science kind of a stance. But then we have a lot of strength in sociology, and actually students are overlapping with students in the sociology department to some degree. And it is not to say by any stretch of the imagination that other disciplines aren't involved. So, as a quick, for example, I think a couple slides from now, I will show you one of our alums who actually landed a job in an anthropology department. We have someone on faculty who really identifies as an economist of education. So it's not just these two disciplines, but I think kind of reasonable to say that these two disciplines are maybe foregrounded. Again, bringing those together with the idea that we're going to impact and influence educational policy and practice. So as you're sort of thinking about the program, one of the things I think you would probably want to do is try to speak to a faculty member whose interests, kind of seem to align with yours. So we do adhere and spend a lot of time thinking about this kind of apprenticeship model where you're working pretty closely with one or maybe a couple different advisors. On the next slide, let me say a couple other things about the program just in general. So currently the structure and the goal is for completion. You can complete in 4 years, but many students are sort of thinking about and trying to figure out ways to turn it into a 5th-year program. And it just allows for a little extra time to, get better prepared, maybe take an extra methods course or two, get a few more publications out. The program is fully funded. So our fellowship is for 4 years, and that includes full tuition coverage plus a stipend. Students also have individual health and vision and dental insurance. And the one other sort of requirement, obligation in addition to some milestones that we'll get to in a sec, is to complete 2 teaching assistantships. So even if you're maybe less on the track of like, I want an academic job, and more on the track of I want to become an educational researcher just in a research shop, we think there are so many opportunities and obligations really to teach people about the research that you're doing, that these teaching assistantships are deemed sufficiently important that we really want everyone to have that experience. And we're super flexible about sort of what makes sense for you. And one of the benefits of a small program is being able to, kind of tailor what that experience is to get you credit for having done that. So those are a few program features. On the next slide, what we'll see is just some of the nuts and bolts of credits. And so it's a 72 credit load, honestly. And you can ask Brianna and Sarah when they hop on here to get their take if this is true or not. But I think you kind of trip over the credits no matter what. So you're required to have a master's degree. 12 of those credits from your master's degree can be transferred in. So you're like already down to 60 credits. So typically this is not the thing that anyone spends much of any time worrying about. Maybe more important, and this will be on the next slide, is sort of how the curriculum is structured. And so there are kind of 2 main parts. Thanks. One is sort of the curriculum structure. And so you're looking at maybe a little bit heavier than usual load on research methods and statistics courses. There is a balance, but it is maybe a little bit heavier skewed toward a quantitative program. So 18 credit hours or 6 courses there. There are some core seminars that take up 15 credit hours at the moment, although some discussion about how that's going to look moving forward. So it's possible that it would look more like 12 credit hours once you got here, but we are having those discussions with the faculty right now. The kind of major or minor, or elective areas where you're totally flexible or could do, directed reading kind of stuff, that takes 21 of your credit hours sort of en route to the 72. And then folks are typically doing 18 credit hours on their dissertation research, which is essentially like you're signing up for a course, but then mostly checking in with your advisor on a regular basis. And so that's kind of half of the big picture in terms of the curriculum structure. The other half is the milestones, which we'll see on the next slide. And so milestone number 1, which Sarah has to look forward to at the end of this year, given that she's in year 2, is the comprehensive exam. And that is followed by a dissertation proposal sometime during year 3 is typically when that happens. And then the doctoral dissertation and oral defense happens, depending on sort of if you're on the 4-year plan or the 5-year plan, sometime in those final 2 years. So then on the next slide, I thought it would be useful to just give you a little sense of the sort of cross-section and I think richness of the types of things that students are studying. And so these are all current student dissertations. And yeah, I'll give you a moment and let you kind of take in kind of the first 2 are kind of more psychological, definitely a little more sociological by the time you get to that last one, and kind of a neat range and array in between. And while you're sort of processing the various dissertation studies, I wanted to flag a quick question in the chat, which is, I think the gist of it is essentially like, hey, how do we afford this 5th year if we want this to happen? And so that can happen in a variety of ways. So if a faculty member gets a grant, you could spend part of your time working on that grant, and then that money could essentially sort of roll over and get you a 5th year. So that's a pretty common way. We've had students win like the ARA Minority Dissertation Award, and so that has provided one student with funding for this current year. So, whether it's fellowships or grants that you go out and get, that your faculty advisor gets, those are kind of the typical approaches. We are in discussion around a sort of teaching fellowship that would be the school sponsoring a 5th year where you're teaching a little bit. And so that's sort of under discussion currently. So there are a couple different ways, but I would say the most common is that the faculty member puts you on a grant for part of your time here. All right, so that's kind of the curriculum all the way to and through the dissertation. You get a little feel for those. Let's go one step further and think about the recent graduates and the careers people are looking at. And so you're seeing I think a neat cross section and kind of typical in many ways. So in the first case, Rebecca on the far left is the former student who I mentioned previously, who's in an anthropology department. So she's down at Vanderbilt now. So careers in academia, pretty common way to go. It's obviously a competitive job market out there. So a number of our students take postdocs, particularly if they're sort of on this 4-year plan. And so Sue is just taken off for the University of Virginia over the summer, and she's got a neat postdoc going there. Other students go into sort of government or nonprofit research kinds of positions. So educational research, again, being kind of the common thread throughout all these. And then on the far right, just because, she was so awesome, we couldn't let her go. Amanda has actually stayed right here at Hopkins. So she started as a research scientist. She's now on our faculty as a research professor. And so that's, kind of a reasonable cross-section of the types of positions that folks are often getting as they graduate from here. So with that, I want to pivot ever so slightly on the next slide to just, we sort of laid out that first slide, beginning with the end. What do our graduates do? How do we prepare them to get there? And I think that's useful information, but I want to sort of complement that with this, what I think is maybe more the spirit of the school. And I think the spirit of a lot of the students and the faculty here is, what can we do to impact education? What can we do to really improve schools and improve education? And out there in the, I'll say out there in the world, because we've got some folks really deeply focused here in Baltimore, other folks focused much more internationally, and really kind of everywhere in between. So, one way that I think we do a really good job of impacting education is, through the kind of standard academic vehicle of publishing. And so if you are able to visit and come onto campus at some point, I encourage you to check out the PhD suite. And in the PhD suite, you'll see this wall might look a little different by the time you get here, as publications get added all the time. But this is just a sampling of papers that students have written for us, not for us, for journals. And so this gives you a little sense of the cross section of publishing that happens. And I think it's also a nice way to sort of, with a picture, illustrate how much of a sort of team effort and team spirit is, I think, characterizes this program. So this is not like a competition of who, gets published the most, but it is definitely everyone loves celebrating each other's accomplishments here. So that's sort of one way that we're impacting education, is by sort of influencing the academic dialogue, the theories that are talked about and implemented in different ways. And that, I think, in turn is then, and I kind of underscored this before, on the next slide, what we'll see is the other, I think, kind of main way that we impact education, which is through, conversing with the real world itself. And so here you see the Hechinger report, an opinion piece. This is by, I think Nathan's a 4th year now and Chiang is a 3rd year. So 2 of our students getting together, thinking about COVID and writing an op-ed that kind of paralleled one of the academic journal publications that they've been working on. And then just as another example, we've got Jody Miller, who has created her own app, which is a way for young sort of elementary school students to give teachers just a quick pulse check. Here's how I'm feeling today. And so that got picked up by CBS News, and lots of people are excited about that. So that's turning into part of Jody's dissertation. So really neat project there. Sort of another illustration. And then next, if we advance the slide, Amanda, who we just saw, she was the one who I said we couldn't let go, who's now a research professor on faculty, did a really neat study on vision. I think it was actually part of her dissertation. And in addition to the academic piece that you see sort of highlighted there, you'll see a piece on Education Week that got written up. And so oftentimes we find ourselves talking to reporters. And, so another way, in addition to sort of writing the op-ed kind of thing ourselves, our students are not infrequently talking to reporters about their latest research. And that's sort of another great way to get the word out. And then the last one that I want to mention, again, 2 of our current students, Paula is a 4th year, Logan's a 3rd year as well, writing up policy briefs. So sometimes outfits, the Urban Institute in this case, coordinates with us to say like, hey, we really need some research done on this or a white paper written on that. And so that's another great way to influence kind of policy and practice, is by taking on those kinds of projects. And definitely, I'm almost done with my spiel, and so you'll get to hear from Sarah and Brianna soon, but in the question and answer session we have at the end, I think totally reasonable to ask them, how frequently these sorts of opportunities come along. I think it's fairly frequent, but I kind of see all of them and pass them on so that they get posted. But I think most students would kind of agree with that assessment. But again, no need to take my word for it. All right. So with that said, I want to wrap up here with what I'm going to call sort of my top 5 indicators of like, yeah, Hopkins really seems like a good fit for you. And so, at the end of the day, I think the most important thing about selecting a PhD program is it the right fit? And anyone on this Zoom call, almost by definition, is going to have lots of really good, compelling options for where to go get a PhD. And so what's the right one of those many good options for you? Well, I think the sort of most distinguishing characteristics about the Hopkins program are, first and foremost, that you're sort of looking for an apprenticeship experience. And so this, it's a small program. We've got, sort of in any given year, 25, 27, typically almost always under 30 students per year, sorry, not per year, total. In any given year, about 25 to 30 students total in the PhD program. And so you're working very closely with, for sure, your advisor and quite possibly some other faculty members as well. That I also want to underscore, though, is balanced with a really close cohort. So there is, this both socially and intellectually active group of students that you would be a part of. And not just sort of your year, but really sort of like everyone who's still in the program And we do try and keep a really close relationship with our alums as well. So that's, if you're looking for that, this is a great place to come. If you're looking for an interdisciplinary approach, also a great place to come. As noted before, you know, sort of psychology / learning sciences and sociology are particular strengths. But again, you know, you're getting exposure to economics, you're getting exposure to some ideas from anthropology. And the idea here is that, you know, educational problems are deeply complex, and by being able to synthesize wisdom from a number of different disciplines, you're going to have a better chance of impacting practice and policy and those real world outcomes. So that's another good signal of fit. And that's not for everyone, right? Some people want a deep distilled training in a particular discipline because they really want to do just that discipline. And that's great, that's fine. But it might not, Hopkins might not be the strongest fit for you. You're looking for rigorous methodological training. So I think I mentioned before that there is, you know, that we sort of maybe lean a little bit quantitative. We're doing, and I'm going to pick off one of the questions in the chat here at the same time. Someone asked, is it a good fit for someone who's interested in both quant and qualitative and maybe sort of mixed methods? Yes, I think we are continuing to build our faculty who do a bit of both. And we do have excellent qualitative researchers here. So again, I think one of the best things you can do is sort of reach out to key faculty members, and on our webpage, you'll see kind of who the faculty members are, what their research expertise is. I think I say that we kind of lean a little bit more quantitative because maybe different from some other programs, you are required to take a few different stats courses. And I think that I know of other PhD programs where you can just kind of be one and done with statistics, and that's not the case here. All right, so let me say, oh, not just yet. I want to get to the happy faces too, but so on the research approaches of the future, this enigmatic little note, Hopkins is a great fit if you're into this idea of open science. And so just for those who are not familiar, who haven't heard of this term, there's, I think revolution is a reasonably accurate, it's not too hyperbolic way to put it. So there's a mini revolution, we'll call it, happening in educational research around transparency and being more open. And that extends from things that I think are, you know, obvious and I think maybe we would all hope for, which is like, gosh, it seems really unfair and inequitable if only those people and institutions that are really financially well off can afford journal articles. Like, knowledge should not be something that only the rich can get their hands on. And so, you know, so many articles that get published are behind paywalls. What can we do about that? So the open science folks have developed this system of preprints where you can post the almost, but not exactly the same copy of your article. And it's there, it's free for the, you know, anyone can download it. And then oftentimes it's you know, just about published, and so you see the publication later. It also, though, has the advantage of allowing people to get feedback before it's published. So if you've got some fatal flaw in your draft that you post on edArchive, is the sort of education preprint service, yeah, someone might give you some feedback and let you know before the final publication comes out. So that's one way of being open. People are posting their data sets, posting open code, so you know exactly how the statistics got run. Posting, if you're into qualitative research, posting in your coding schemes, so that could be replicated, or your measures, so those could get used in a different study. but it's also trying to be open and transparent around things that are maybe more subtle. And a good example of this is, how many analyses did you run? So this idea of like, statistical significance, we would all, I think, hope and assume that, a rigorous researcher is going to analyze their data thoroughly. But then I think we would also hope and assume that no rigorous educational researcher would be torturing their data until it tells you what you want to hear. And if you run enough statistical analyses, yeah, by chance, you might end up with that. If you torture your data long enough, you might end up with that thing that you wanted to hear, and then publishing that. And that's certainly, it's not going to replicate. It's not going to be useful in schools. It's kind of a bogus finding. And so open science offers a sort of antidote to that, which is tell people up front before you even have your data, or at the very least, before you look at your data, tell us exactly the analyses you're going to run and what your hypotheses are then when you're blind to what the results are. And then we can have a lot more faith and belief in those hypotheses. So a little long-winded there, apologies for that. But basically this idea of the research approaches for the future is, we at Hopkins think there is going to be a lot more of this open science, and we have some of the best scholars on this topic right here, right now. And so before you sort of get out into the world of doing research and find yourself in the midst of like changing rules, and it used to be okay to do it this way, but now you've got to do it that way. And what is a pre-registration anyway? You'll learn all those techniques here. And we think be much, much better prepared to conduct research that actually really impacts the real world. So feel free to, hopefully that was relatively clear. Feel free to follow up on that in the Q&A as well. And then the last thing, which I think we've kind of said ad nauseum at this point, your interests are really to impact that real world, whether it's educational practice or policy. And I think also maybe the one other thing I'll add here is that, for a lot of students and for a lot of faculty, this happens through research practice partnerships. So at Hopkins, you'll see, a close collaboration on data and data sets with Baltimore City Public Schools. We have the BERC, Baltimore Educational Research Consortium is what that stands for. We have collaboration going with North Bay, an education outfit that focuses and specializes on environmental education. Bob Balfans and the folks in the Center for Social Organization of Schools do lots of close work with lots of districts all over the country. So there's a lot of, really trying to be on the ground and connected to actual teachers and actual students, and sort of making a difference that way. So those are my top 5. Talk to other faculty, they might give you a slightly different list, but I think those are all hopefully helpful kind of concrete examples and illustrations of, yeah, Hopkins is kind of the right place for you, or gosh, I'm really looking to specialize exclusively in one discipline. Maybe I'll still apply to Hopkins, but I want to think hard about whether it is that fit that I'm looking for. So with that, let's do one more slide of the, various, during and after COVID, if there's such a thing as after COVID. Happy students. The top right-hand picture is AERA, the big education research conference. And while you're sort of soaking in our grads, our people at conferences, you've already been introduced, and you know that Sarah and Brianna are about to talk to you and give you a little sense of their experience. Sarah's a second-year student. Brianna is in her 5th year. And I have to brag a tiny bit because Brianna is too modest and won't do it herself. But in the spirit of like the question around how do you fund that 5th year, Brianna just landed a huge fellowship from the Administration for Children and Families, which is a sort of division or subset of the Department of Health and Human Services. So huge congrats to her. And with that, let me turn it over to Sarah to give you a little sense of her experience.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you everyone for coming today. My name is Sarah Caroleo. Like Hunter said, I'm a second year in the program right now. So I was still relatively new. I remember being in your shoes not too long ago, and hopefully we can help answer any questions you have. But I'm specifically interested in researching teacher perceptions and beliefs about student ability, kind of to Hunter's point about how that impacts what's going on in the classroom, how they make instructional decisions to support students and to develop them. I chose Hopkins for a few specific reasons. The first being that we have a lot of really esteemed faculty here. Like Hunter was talking about, we have this really cool interdisciplinary approach where we have thought leaders in sociology, neuroscience, educational psychology. We even have a few policy people too. And getting to learn from them in all of the different classes is really enriching. And because it's the apprenticeship model where you're working really closely with your advisor, that is also huge to be able to work with someone who is really esteemed and knows what they're doing in the field. So that was the biggest draw for me personally. But I was also really drawn by the rigorous research methods training. Prior to this, I was a teacher. I did not have quantitative methods at all. So knowing that they would give me what I need to be a good mixed methods researcher, that is my goal. So to Erica's question about qualitative, there are qualitative opportunities in the School of Ed also, but the program also does allow us to take classes in other schools as well. So there's plenty of opportunity to take other qualitative classes. And if you find an advisor who is mixed methods, there's plenty of room to get that training that you need in the research methods you're interested in. And all of that to my third point there is that this program does have a lot of flexibility where you can individualize your own experience based on what you need, which I don't think is common. Honestly, I think we get a lot of flexibility with like the TA ships that we work on and the type of research projects that we get to do. So it feels very personalized, and I really appreciate that. Some of my favorite things about the School of Ed is that it is, like Hunter said, a small community. It is supportive, tight-knit. We have regular social functions. We have regular professional development seminars, and a few students have even started journal clubs where we focus on different topics of interest. And it is really helpful to be able to interact with people who are, I don't know, I guess just at different points in the process, because they can cheer you on, they can help you navigate the whole doctoral process. And to my second point there, it really helps with finding research projects to get on. So just an example, right now, I am working with a fifth year student who we don't work in the same lab, we don't have the same advisor, but just through some of the social things, I was able to get to know her and realize we have some similar interests, and that's opened up an opportunity for me to get some research practice, which is really cool. And also, kind of echoing what Hunter said, I think the open science movement is really awesome. It's really amazing that Hopkins has these leaders who are professors training us to be more ethical and conscientious researchers. And I don't think that you can find that many other places. They have started incorporating more open science practices into early courses. So it's just kind of becoming more natural, more second nature for us. So I think that is a huge benefit. A few tips I have for you, just like was mentioned earlier, is to communicate with any faculty members that you think you might be interested in working with. It is really important to make sure that you are pursuing an advisor who's a good fit, meaning research methods, even just areas of interest, and someone who you think will be supportive for you. So doing that earlier before you submit applications is going to be really helpful. And then also, it's really important to have an articulated research focus. This is a research-centered program, so being able to talk about why you want to research and at least, you know, some key headlights of what you're most interested in. They don't expect you to know your dissertation topic yet, but it's just helpful to be able to talk about it and have a why. I think that's it for me. and pass it off to Brianna.
Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to meet you virtually. My name is Brianna, and I'm a fifth-year student here in the PhD program at the School of Ed. Leanie is my advisor, and my dissertation topic is about geographic context and how it's related to child outcomes and Head Start settings. And I also explore associations with teachers' job demands and resources. I've been in the program now for a while, and so it's it's nice to just really take in how much everybody is doing in the program. But I remember when I came, people had these really diverse interests that they were coming in with and that they wanted to explore. And I thought that the program was such a good fit because there were a lot of people doing many different things. And so I felt that that was, that meant that this would be a place where I could learn more about things that I didn't already know and could be introduced to a lot of new information. And I found that experience to be true. And beyond that, another reason that I came was for the faculty. I saw that the faculty members were involved in a number of things in Baltimore City, like the research practice partnerships that Hunter mentioned earlier. And the location works for me. So I grew up in the DMV. And so I thought, okay, I can have, kind of my family, home, social life, and people that I know, but I also just know that working in this region generally just means a lot of opportunities to do things and be places fairly easily. I mean, between Northern Virginia and New York, even, people will commute or go to different, there's just a lot to do and things are very close. And I like that. As far as research and writing opportunities, those have kind of come about. Like Hunter mentioned earlier, their opportunities come up, I would say about every 6 weeks, there's a chance to do something, like apply for a fellowship, work with someone on a report, edit or, begin a work of writing that you kind of have been turning over in your mind. And there are many people who I think are available to write with you. There's a lot of teamwork, which I really appreciate. Writing manuscripts or anything else is just much easier when many hands make light work. And then I just noticed that there's so many faculty members had a lot of Baltimore and Maryland community relationships, people that they've been working with for a long time doing this work. And so the experience and wisdom they could offer was just amazing and has been amazing. My tips for prospective students first, yeah, just be yourself and don't be afraid to let your interests change. And you'll have a lot of opportunity, I think, to meet many different kinds of professionals and practitioners, to other researchers, to people who work with nonprofits, to people who do research work in think tanks and policy places. So just let yourself kind of meet them and get familiar with what their work may feel like or flow like. And that can give you some idea of what you want to do after your time in the program. And then I'd say leave yourself time to think and plan. I wish I left myself more time to think and plan a little earlier in this program, but I think I was just in it and I was experiencing in it. I was doing things with the sociology department. I mean, I just explored. But I think that means that the decisions that I've made and the things I've gotten to do, I feel very concrete and good about those. And it's made for a really great time. So I look forward to your questions at the end.
All right, so now we're going to continue by going over the application requirements. Applicants must submit a completed application, which can be found on the school's website. And keep in mind, there is an $80 application fee when you submit your application. You'll also need an updated resume. Your personal statement should not exceed more than 750 words. In addition to the personal statement, a writing sample must be submitted. And this would be a sample of your most professional writing that demonstrates your analytic and critical writing skills. And moving on, you should plan on submitting 3 letters of recommendation. It is recommended that these letters should include at least the following: 2 submitted by faculty members and one by a supervisor or administrator who has been in a position to evaluate your professional development. We'll need official GRE scores and official transcripts. Please keep in mind, we need all official transcripts, including institutions you may have taken courses but did not receive a degree. And lastly, an interview may be required. The application deadline date is December 15, 2022. All materials, including official transcripts, letters of recommendation, and test scores must be received by the admissions office on or before the December 15, 2022 deadline for full consideration. There are a few additional steps you need to take in order to complete the application process. If you're an international student, you must submit a TOEFL or IELTS score. And please note, if you hold qualifying degrees or have earned credits from institutions outside the US, you must have your academic records evaluated by an accredited independent credential evaluation agency before you can be considered for admission to the PhD program. Additional information can be found on the school's website. And for tuition, please note all PhD students at SOE are eligible for a fellowship for up to 4 years. The fellowship includes a yearly stipend and will cover tuition and fees. The fellowship will also cover individual health, dental, and vision insurance. And lastly, you must be registered full-time and be in good academic standing every semester to continue to be eligible for the fellowship. And if you're interested in applying for financial aid, we strongly encourage you to apply for financial aid when you start your application. The School of Education offers a limited number of partial, need-based institutional scholarships each year. SOE's endowed scholarships awards range on average from $500 to $1,500 per semester and are applied to tuition expenses beginning in the fall semester. To see if you qualify for the endowed scholarship, please visit the Grants and Scholarships page on the school's website. Thank you for attending the Doctor of Philosophy virtual webinar. At this time, we would like to open up the floor for questions. So please type your questions in the chat box.
Yeah, thanks guys. Really appreciate it, and definitely start popping the questions in. There may be a few that if they're much more idiosyncratic, like is the program a fit for me, that we'll sort of answer offline. But the first one, if we've been out of school for 5 or more years, does the 2/3 LORs from faculty requirement still hold? Letter of recommendation, I'm guessing. And yes, like doesn't really matter how long you've been out. So if that's the question, do I still need letters of recommendation? The answer would be yes. If the spirit of the question is, I understand that we have to have letters of recommendation. Do they have to be from faculty? There's no police sitting there saying like, is this from a faculty or a former faculty or a research scientist? But you know, we want to know about your potential and prospects as a researcher. And so it kind of makes more sense to have a recommender who is familiar with educational research, if that makes sense. And if not educational research, then like social science research. Please ping the chat again if I screwed up your question and didn't get it right. But I think one of those was probably what you were asking, I hope. All right, from Valerie, completed my master's for some reason or another, never took the GRE. Would I need to take the test to submit my score for the application? Yes, is the quick answer to that one. Sion, do you want to say anything about GREs in general? I feel like we get lots and lots of questions about exceptions or special circumstances, and I think we pretty much require them in just about every instance. Is that right?
Yes, Dr. Gelbach, you are right. The GRE scores are required for this program.
All right, from Priscilla, a question about admission requirements. If there's not a writing sample that I have handy, is there something else an applicant can submit? That's a good question. So obviously you can write something. I think the spirit of that requirement in the application is we'd love to be able to, get a sense of your academic writing. So yeah, I don't necessarily recommend this, but some people have submitted like their term paper from college. And so that gives us a little sense. If there is something that's pertinent to education, right, that's probably a better fit and makes more sense, and it'll be more meaningful to us as we review files. Stuff that you've written in your master's program is often fair game and works out pretty well for people. I'll leave it there, but again, ping the chat if that didn't quite cover the question. Oh, another good question. If I'm a PhD student in a different program, can I basically sort of transfer into this program? And that's exactly right. Yes. You'd simply, it'd be like you're starting over again, essentially, except, quite possibly you have research methods class that you've already taken that would look good on your transcript. So you might be a slightly more competitive applicant, but you'd still need to fulfill all our requirements, and we can walk through and figure out if it, if some of the credits you transfer in would tick off some of our requirements. Happy to have that conversation with you at any point. But yeah, short answer is we're totally happy to take people who want to transfer out of their current PhD program into ours. All right. On the website, there are different departments and fields of expertise: ed policy, cognition, learning, sciences. Are the departments separate from each other? What if I'm interested in the works of faculty who are in separate field? So not separate, like different faculty have different areas that they're interested in, but there are no sort of like, I don't want to say artificial divisions between faculty, but like there really aren't those kinds of separations here by like, this person's in the psychology department within the School of Education, and that person's within the, sociology of education group. And so working with both of them at the same time would be tricky. Like that doesn't happen here at all. It's very easy to pull together a team of advisors and mentors from very different disciplines. And that goes back to sort of the conversation we had about being an interdisciplinary program. All right. When is the appropriate time for contacting an intended professor? So I think this means like, hey, I've found someone on the website. I want to find out if our interests kind of align and if it's a good fit. I want to actually turn that one over to Sarah and Brianna and get my quick answer would be the sooner the better, but like, when did you guys start doing that? When did you think about that? I think it would be helpful to get a student perspective on that one.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. I believe I started reaching out maybe mid-October, and I was able to connect with my current advisor, I think early November, like via Zoom. And that was helpful just for clarifying fit, and yeah, also helpful because I feel like we made a good connection and I was on his radar as well. So agree, probably at least figuring out how to write your email message in a way that will get their attention and get some materials together. If they want to see any samples or anything, just getting the ball rolling will probably end up benefiting you. Brianna, do you have anything from your experience?
No, I think that's all really, really good advice in terms of the timeline as well. I honestly didn't do it that way, but But you don't have to do it the way that I did it. I really like applied to schools first and then talked to faculty after that. Like, and I think that was more of a function of like, I remember I just having a lot going on at the time. Like I was still teaching in the classroom and I was in a master's program. And so I was just like, I can talk to you later. I just need to get the application in by the deadline. So as long as you reach out to faculty, you know, and at some point introduce yourself and share that you're interested in working with them, I think it will pan out okay. But I do think that the Sarah strategy is the most effective one and a really good way to make sure that you get a feel for who your advisor is and what they're like and whether it's a good relationship.
Love it. Do as I say, not as I did. So I would just add that like no faculty member is going to be offended that you're reaching out now. It just makes you seem like you know what you're doing, you're on top of your game. So yeah, I would say like as soon as you're ready, and sooner is better than later. So thanks to you both. Oh, I'm gonna definitely send this, and this might have to be our last question here. But I'm gonna send this one to admissions. I have 2 master's degrees, but no bachelor's. Am I eligible to apply? I haven't seen that one before. So I don't, Tanya and Seon, I'm not sure if you've seen it before, but do you know the answer to this one, or should we get back to this person?
I can take that, Dr. Gelback. So for your degrees that you have complete, I'm not sure if they're international degrees, but if they are, we do have to have you go through a credential evaluation process to have your international degrees evaluated. Normally, you would need an undergraduate degree and a master's degree level to apply to the PhD program. But if you do email admissions specifically with that information about your prior schooling, I can certainly get back to you, and you'll see a slide at the end with my contact information.
Excellent. So I think we want to kind of wind up here, but before people hop off, we do want to flag. We're trying a new thing this year, which we think and hopeful will be helpful, which is Sion. Help me out with the dates here, but I think November 15th, maybe, we were going to do a final session. We'll touch on a few of the things just sort of by way of reminder that we touched on here, but the focus will be really on like helping you guys and sort of pro tips on completing the application and sort of how you want to think strategically about that. And so the date, assuming I have it right, is about a month out from when everything is due. And so hopefully that's a good time. You've maybe already even started a little bit of your application, but it's a good time for us to give you some, you know, kind of words of wisdom, but mostly to let you guys ask questions about the applications in very sort of concrete terms.
Yes, Dr. Gelbach, the event is on November 15 from 3 to 4 p.m. We hope that you guys are able to join us. You'll be able to register for the event. If you go on the events page on the school's website, you'll be able to see the event there on the page. Here on this slide, we have some important contact information. For any admissions related questions, please reach out to Ms. Tanya McMillan. Her email address and phone number is on the slide. Any program related questions, please reach out to Ms. Raven Minervina, and her email address is on this slide.
Great. Thank you guys. And if you didn't get your question answered, please feel free to reach out to me as well. If it's sort of more me or Raven, if it's more program related, I'm happy to respond to stuff too.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gelbach, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you, Brianna and Sarah, for also sharing your, again, your story here and your journey here at SOE. Thank you, everyone, for your interest in the Johns Hopkins School of Education. We look forward to hearing from you. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.